Hello, my name is Dean Moss. I'm the Vice President of Hahns Peak Area Historical Society, and I want to share with you some of our treasures this afternoon. I'd also like to share with you our main seller, Historic Hahns Peak, written by Thelma Stevenson, that has a whole lot of treasures in it that you can research on your own. So I highly recommend this. It tells a lot about Hahns Peak, better than any other single source. Thank you very much. Welcome to Hahns Peak, Colorado. It wasn't always known as Hahns Peak. The Ute Indians called it Old Baldy. It was named Hahns Peak on August 27th of 1865 by William Doyle in company with Joseph Hahn, who put a paper stored in a baking powder can on top of Hahns Peak saying, "This is Hahns Peak." Captain George Way discovered gold and told Joseph Hahn and partner William Doyle in 1862. In 1867, George Way left for provisions and no return. Hahn and Doyle headed across the Continental Divide on snowshoes in the winter. Joseph Hahn died on Muddy River in Middle Park in 1867, and he's now where he was buried in Kremling. They were trapped by the winter for two reasons. One, they didn't have extra provisions, and number two, they were busy digging gold instead of heading for lower country, so they got trapped, and it cost Joseph Hahn his life. On November 9, 1874, the Hahns Peak Mining District was reorganized. John Farwell founded the Continental Placer Mining Company in 1876. Hahns Peak Gold and Silver Company was formed later on. In 1877, the election of Hahns Peak chose as Routt County as the county seat, which it lasted from 1877 to 1912. When it was moved to Steamboat Springs. Let's talk about the cultural treasures that we are protecting and opening for the inspection of the general public. The Hahns Peak School was built and it was put into use in 1912. And it continued in use until 1943 when it was closed. One of the teachers that was quite famous was Edna Trollinger, and the Hahns Peak School followed the school at Columbine, for which Gertrude Jewell was teacher there. She had 5 or 6 students. This was all during the gold rush. Anyway, this is the school that we are protecting. We just got the floor refinished and it's got a nice paint job. And I want to mention the Wheeler family. Rose Wheeler family came and painted it in 29, and they came back 10 years later and painted it in 2019 again, white. Originally, the color they covered up was green, and how it got green, nobody knows. So anyway, we now have a white schoolhouse. The Hahns Peak Civic and Social Organization met in the schoolhouse on a monthly basis, usually a potluck dinner. Then they'd have a little business meeting. And in 1972, the Hahns Peak Area Historical Society was officially chartered and has been in existence until now. We have built a museum building that has a lot of treasures in there that are labeled for your own inspection. And we have a dynamite house that was moved from the Royal Flush Mine, which was a hard rock mining claim on the side of Hahns Peak. The tunnel went straight for about 2,300 feet, and then there were lots of side tunnels, almost 3 miles of underground tunnels in that mine. And then also we had placer mining. Placer mining does not involve dynamite, which is what the dynamite house was used for, storing up at the Royal Flush. Placer mining uses water. And there was the big ditch built by Farwell from the North Fork of the Elk River all the way down to Hahn's Peak, where they used that water for placer mining. Most of the gold that was taken out of here was taken out from placer mines. Anyway, that was the two mining methods, and the mining claims, if you discovered gold, you put your name on the corner post and you put your location notices there. Each mining claim was 330 feet wide by 660 feet long. 330 feet is 5 chains, and 660 feet is 10 chains, being 50 square chains, 10 chains to the acre. It was a 5-acre mining claim. And you could file multiple claims in an association, and you put those in the notice in the recording district and now in the county courthouse. The only way that you can hold a claim is to do the annual assessment work and record it in the mining district, and later on now with the BLM regulations you have to also record it in the courthouse. So anyway, this is how mining claims were filed and how people did the work. We also have a pole barn. The pole barn was built in the footprint of the original stable for the horses that the students rode to school, and they put them in the stable while they were in the classroom, then they rode them home. The stable burned down, and when we built the pole barn, we built it around the footprint of the stable. You can still see the concrete right there. And there were all these relics, tools used in gold mining that were just out there laying on the ground, rotting away and rusting away. We had a grizzly or a sluicer reducer box down there. We had lots of other tools. The hog that they had on the end of the hose for placer mining. All these things, all these tools, they were just sitting there rusting. So we worked hard and we built a pole barn. After we got all those things under cover, and we had a gentleman from Ace Hardware and Steamboat come up and paint a mural for us. And it's very, very educational. You might want to take a look at that mural as well as all the tools. Then we fell heir to a stagecoach from the Whipple stagecoach from Wolcott to Hahn's Peak. There were 3 stagecoaches. We have one of the originals. The Chamber of Commerce and Steamboat has another original, and the third one is unknown where it is. Anyway, it was restored with the help of the Hicks and the Jaegers. They restored it, and it's there now on display with the pole barn addition. We also had a wagon restored by Tim Wright, and it's also there on display. Well, everything was going along great, except we had some toilets that had some leaky vaults, and so we built a new toilet, state of the art, like Forest Service, probably better than Forest Service, I would say. And we have that improvement. We got the Withers cabin given to us by the Pete Withers family, and we moved it from Upper Main Street to Lower Main Street, and we restored the chinking and the logs and the roof and everything, and got it in nice order, and it's furnished with some of the original furnishings from the Withers family, plus some other furnishings. So we have that. So that pretty much completes our improvements and where we are today. We've come a long ways with over $107,000 in MAHFAB grants, and we matched it in labor and contributions and money from our own treasury. We appreciate the help from Routt County through their tax support. But last but not least, we have received a whole lot of donations from the general public up here that like what we're doing. And if you care to contribute some more, we would appreciate it very much. Thank you. Yeah, there is something special. Herman Mailer's violin. Herman Mailer was the surviving bachelor, lone resident of historic Hahn's Peak after the gold rush busted. He was here when Rilla and Al Wiggins would come up here on the weekends, and when they bought a place to stay, then they would give him their leftovers, since he was a bachelor and he really appreciated all the leftovers. So he was the last guy in here. So that's his violin. He used to have the bar, the dance hall. So That's his violin there. And then they just got the trunks from him.
All of these are from the Moss family, this whole collection, and Robert Moss, who was Dean's dad, was very much a part of the original Historic Society and got the money and built this building. And
He was a lead carpenter and
So-
contractor.
all of this under here came from the Moss Museum.
Well, he was, but the ironic thing is he was kind of a late comer. He bought the ranch in 1964, after a lot of other things had happened around here.
Right.
But he got active in the Historic Society, he was president, and he got this museum built with help, donations. There was no county money, there was no funny money, it was all hard cash out of the pocket to get this thing built. So, what a nice facility here. And a lot of people have stopped and enjoyed it. And we've received a lot of donations in this museum to preserve the schoolhouse, so it's been a worthwhile project. He also was instrumental in getting the jail moved back from Steamboat Springs in 1973. In 1912, that's when the schoolhouse went into service. The county seat was moved to Steamboat Springs and the jail, and Moffett County was split off of Routt County on the west end. Prior to that, everything in Routt County went from the Continental Divide to the state line, from Wyoming state line to the Flat Tops. Everything was Routt County, too big to manage, really. Poor sheriff, he went into Browns Park and he brought back 2 outlaws, locked them up in this jail, but it was a long horseback ride after he arrested them. He had to bring them back horseback. So that was a 2 or 3 day trip, Sheriff Neiman. And so when the county seat was moved to Steamboat, the jail went to Steamboat. In 1973, the Routt County had a new jail, and they offered Hahn's Peak, the old jail, so my father and a couple others went down there in a flatbed truck and brought it back home to Hahn's Peak.